I call myself a teacher. I am a seeker and pursuer of truth. And wherever truth leads, I am determined to follow. Now, of course, this is a very difficult proposition because history has proven time and time again that people care little or nothing about truth. My name is Chauncey Killens. I'm from Southern California, and I don't know if I necessarily have a movement. What I'm trying to do is encourage people to challenge this agenda by the homosexual community about same-sex marriage. And I am going around the country in various settings to try to help people that already know that same-sex marriage is wrong, but they're afraid to speak up about it. This court has made wrong decisions in the past, and this today is also a wrong decision.
Chauncey Killens came from California to be here.
I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. The government and the courts did not create marriage. God created marriage and family. So I don't believe the court has a right to change the definition. There are 4 stages to deception that leads to dictatorship. And the first one is you have to deny absolute truth. The second one is you use fear and intimidation. And the third is you have the medias, politicians, judges, business, religious leaders, scientists promote the propaganda.
Back in the U.S., more evidence of a liberal bias. A study released today shows media coverage around the time the U.S. Supreme Court first considered the gay marriage issue had much more content from supporters than opponents. The Pew Research Center studied nearly 500 stories on the topic over a 2-month period. Stories with statements supporting the legalization of same-sex marriage outnumbered by 5-to-1 stories dominated by the views of opponents. Pew says many stories were about polls showing societal attitudes quickly changing, and the study shows supporters were better at getting their message out. The project's acting director says she does not think the study necessarily shows news media opinions skew left.
Fourth and final, you use any method to minimize or totally eliminate peaceful opposition. The first one is always the thing that comes. And in America today, 3.5 of these steps are happening in our country. Denying absolute truth is saying there is no such thing as right or wrong. Each individual has a moral compass within themselves, and they decide what right and wrong is. Now, you cannot live in a real world and believe that. If I go to your house and move in because I believe it's my house, all you'd have to do is call the cops. The cops would come, look at the mortgage statement and say, no, the name of the owner's here. You don't live here, you're going to jail. And then if you just think logically what that would mean. Gangbangers could do gangs, people can do drugs if you want to rape people, if that's your absolute truth. And then why would the people that disagree with this be offended about American slavery? That was their absolute truth at the time. Or Nazi Germany or communism. See, once you allow no truth, you can tell no one anything is wrong. But notice in our society, they don't do that. They do believe in right and wrong. So it applies to homosexuality too. I see America in regards to denying absolute truth and those 4 steps at 3 3/4 at the current time in 2016. And the reason I say that is because many of our powerful leaders, wealthy people, are actually promoting and teaching this in our society, that there is no absolute truth. And if you disagree with them, they bully you, fear and intimidation. They try to shut you up, not with reason. They say you're a hater. They come up with nonsense. You get fired off your job. Then the leaders, the powerful leaders, number 3, the powerful leaders, politicians, judges, the educational system, scientists, religious leaders or businesses more, and we, the church, are in the 4th group. They have to minimize or totally eliminate our voices. And you can see currently the way things are happening in this country, that religious freedoms are being incrementally denied, and the side that claims to be tolerant and everybody has a right to their opinion are opposed to Christianity. And I believe, now people disagree with it, that they actually want to get rid of God and the Bible, the Christian faith, out of America totally, and they're working behind scenes. Politicians, powerful business leaders, and etc., religious leaders are working behind scenes to come up with ways where they can exclude Christianity the same way they did in Nazi Germany and with American slavery. I read quite a bit, and I was following the 3 studies that came out regarding why homosexuals are born gay, late 80s and early 90s. 3 studies about genetic reason why people were born gay. Simon LeVay, he was gay. He was a scientist. His study was debunked. Then you got Hammer and others that came out with a study saying that twins would become gay with 52% of identical twins, and 48% if they're identical twins, they should all 100% be gay, not 48 and 52%. And then there was another study, I always forget the name of it, but they constantly come out with stuff like this. And then there's been people that have changed their mind. Dr. Robert Spitzer, he was the head of the psychiatric division. And through political pressure, they forced him to accept that people were born gay, and they took it out of the DSM-3, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, the Bible of Psychology. They took it out. 30 years later, the same doctor did studies on homosexuals that came out of the gay lifestyle. And when he presented, the same doctor that got it taken out of the DSM-3, when he presented his findings to the homosexual community that homosexuals can change, they vilified him.
The DSM stands for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's a publication of the American Psychiatric Association, and it's kind of the Bible of psychiatry. I came up with a definition in 1973 that made it possible to argue that homosexuality was not a mental disorder. I mean, the gay activists have taken the viewpoint that from a political strategic point of view, they do better if they can convince society at large that once you're homosexual, you can never change. And I can appreciate that that helps them politically, and I'm sympathetic towards their political goals, but I think it's just not true.
Not all homosexuals, because we can't put all homosexuals. There are homosexuals that believe marriage between a man and a woman. I've talked to some. But there are these really hostile homosexual groups that force all this stuff.
Go! Get the hell out of here! You're not welcome! Not welcome!
You're talking about, dumb. Jesus was a faggot, just like me.
What's the name of the gay gene? I'd be asking people all the time. We don't know. Well, why are you going to try to make us accept something if you don't even have any scientific evidence? Then we know it's political. It's not scientific. Just like American slavery, blacks were inferior. Well, where's the scientific? Well, we found scientists to prove. No, these were lies. And now the homosexual community is using lies because they want it so bad. And I just ask them, what is the name of the gay? Well, we haven't found any yet. Well, then stop forcing our kids to learn this. Wait till we find the gay gene and then say, see, now we have evidence. Now we have a right to teach it in our school to our children. See, they're lying. They'll never find a gay gene. Never. This is my opinion. People disagree with me. I believe it's the church's responsibility as a moral basis to stand up for what's right. The problem is, I think, because the church depends on Democratic Party, Republican Party, we only have one president, and his name is Jesus Christ. And when the church gets caught up in the Democrats get caught up in the black part, so we're Democrat. Republican, white folks are in the Republican Party because we white. No, God is not a racist. Christians are supposed to vote on moral values, and whoever runs for office, we should support people no matter what the outcome. I don't care if they're gonna win. I personally gonna vote, I'm gonna write in Ted Cruz, even though he ain't on the thing, because he's not perfect, but he's defended the values that I believe in: marriage between a man and a woman, a child in the mother's womb is a baby, and you shouldn't kill it. But the churches are concerned about money, income. And no matter how good the economy is, if people are immoral.
Many fear the court's ruling opens the door for a number of unconventional marriages to eventually win favor.
If California were to redefine marriage to include polygamy and polyamory, could a Texan go to California and have a group marriage and then move back to Texas and say, the Constitution requires you recognize this?
The what ifs and the reality of gay marriage in all 50 states will be hot on the campaign trail this summer, and the divisions are miles apart. While all of the Democratic candidates celebrated the court's ruling, all of the Republican candidates expressed some level of disappointment.
I think the left is now going to go after our First Amendment rights. I think it is wrong for the federal government to force Christian individuals, businesses, pastors, churches to participate in wedding ceremonies that violate our sincerely held religious beliefs. We have to stand up and fight for religious liberty.
We're still going to have problems. What we need is a moral foundation that'll solve the economic problem. So we got it twisted. We're talking about the economy today instead of morality. And whoever runs for office should be standing for moral principles. Even if you're not a Christian, you don't have to be a Christian to believe in morality. There's right and wrong. You don't have to be a Christian, but it comes from God. So whoever runs for office should hold it. And if America wants to change, it's the church's responsibility, not the politicians, not welfare, not the psychiatrists, but the church has left that responsibility to everybody else because we're afraid to stand up for the truth. We're afraid to go to jail. We're afraid to get beat up. We're afraid to get talked about. And as long as the church continues to play this game, God is going to get tired of the church, and our lovers who we trust, the Democrat, Republican Party, they're going to be the ones that are going to persecute us, just like it happened to the children of Israel because their disobedience, just like the 7 churches in Revelation. I'm going to take your lampstand away if you don't repent. The same thing's happening in America, and God's going to take the lampstand out of America because we, the church, true Christians, won't stand up for what's right because they're afraid of the cost.
No historian can rewrite that. No president can expunge that. And if 1,000 angels swore in 1,000 Bibles that this was not the case, it would in no way alter the fact that this American civilization was conceived, established, dedicated, and founded on a biblical cornerstone. America was brought into existence for the will and the purpose of God. On this night, over 200 years ago, George Washington held in his hand the first ever presidential address. In that address was a prophetic warning. It was this: the propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself hath ordained. In other words, if America should ever turn away from God and his ways, if it should ever disregard his eternal rules of order and right, then his blessings, the smiles of heaven, would be removed from the land. It was an ancient warning. It had been given in Hebrew words by the prophets to the kingdom of Israel. But Israel turned away from God and disregarded his eternal rules of order and right. They drove God out of their government, out of their public squares, out of their culture, out of the lives of their children. They worshipped idols and served other gods. They celebrated immorality and they persecuted righteousness. They lifted up their children on the altars of foreign gods. And the blessings of God were removed from the land and replaced with judgment. It is 2,500 years later, and America has made the same mistake. We too have turned away from God. We too have driven him out of the government, out of our public square, out of our culture, out of the lives of our children. We too have profaned the sacred and sanctified the profane. And we too have killed our most innocent, over 55 million of our unborn children, and our collective hands are covered with blood. What we were warned never to do, we now have done. And now we gather in the city named after the one who gave us the prophetic warning. And yesterday in this city, in the building that sits across from this hill, the justices of the Supreme Court took up their places on the bench to decide whether America should strike down the biblical and historic definition of marriage. The very fact that an event should take place as such is a sign in itself that this is the America of Washington's warning. It's here. And this day of which he warned is now. We have become a civilization in spiritual schizophrenia, a nation at war against its own foundation. The Supreme Court opens its sessions with the words, "God save the United States and this honorable court." But if this honorable court should overrule the word of God and strike down the eternal rules of order and right that heaven itself hath ordained, how then will God save it? Supreme Court justices, can you judge the ways of God? Can you, with man-made verdicts, overrule the eternal laws of God? There is another court and there is another judge, and before him all men and all judges will give account. If a nation's high court should pass judgment on the Almighty, should you then be surprised that the Almighty should pass judgment on the court and that nation?
We love homosexuals and support their equal treatment with dignity, respect, and fairness. However, we will not, we cannot, we must not support their redefinition of marriage based on special rights, not equal rights.